You gotta have a roof like less than.
It's
8,
just
10
better.
years old.
No, you're liable 20 years. 20 years you have to replace it.
Call the March 13th regular meeting of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority to order. Are there any staff or trustee additions or deletions to the agenda or consent agenda?
Staff has no additions or deletions, Mr. Chairman.
Here none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Public comment, Ms. Lindley?
Good evening. On the agenda tonight, there's an update with EMS House, Mike and Molly White. The exploration negotiation has been going on for quite some time. And with Mike and Molly, who want to provide, care in an emergency room type situation. I'm asking the board to consider that the board should recommend to Mike and Molly that they should be talking to Meridian about an association, since there's already a hospital facility or emergency room facility at the hospital, and they're familiar with it. So I think that you guys should recommend that to Mike and Molly and to Meridian. And there's been a lot of foot dragging, 2.5 years with an empty building. And the board's inability to act has cost the Columbia County taxpayers, the Indigent Care Fund, well over $1 million. And so far, about $50,000 a month or $600,000 a year. The board needs to ramp up what you're doing. And also on the agenda is the Bedoya building in demolition. And my question to you, has the authority even thought about selling the building and let the future owner decide what they want to do with the building? Gonna have some kind of.
Do you have any more comments?
Yes, I do. In the backup material, there's a lease agreement executed in September of 2022. Do you know what attorney approved the lease and the legality of it? Maybe that's a Dale question.
Yeah.
Who signed the lease? There's a signature, but there's no printed name underneath there. So who signed this lease? And for future reasons, maybe a printed name should be under a signature. Can I be provided with that information now? Brandon, you signed it. Sonia and Cynthia witnessed it. You signed that lease?
You said I heard it.
No, for the county who signed it. I can read your name.
I went
Without looking there.
Recognize it? Sonia and Cynthia, do you remember?
I believe that's David Rouse.
Yeah, for future reference, there should be a printed name.
I would not argue that.
And, you know, they thought a lot of people were coming. I don't know what you guys do with the leftover papers. Maybe you have lots of scrap paper. Maybe if they were done on front and back, we'd only have 2 sheets of paper versus 4, and you might save a few trees. Thank you.
Comments from anybody attending via Zoom? If none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Got a new business discussion of possible action on the Bedoya building demolition. Woody?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have at your at your desk a sheet of paper. It basically has Bedelia Building demolition requirements. This was not completed until this weekend, and I realize that you may not have seen it over the weekend. But in essence, it contains those elements that will be included in the bid documents. And I wanted to review those with you as it related to the Bedelia Building. Before I run through this list, I wanted to comment on the public comment. When I became the executive director, the Bedelia Building had already been vetted and decisions had already been discussed about its demolition. And if I remember what I was told correctly, and those of you that were here can correct me if I'm wrong, the trustees decided that you did not want to sell the Bedelia Building to a third party because it was right in the heart of your campus, and whatever the third party did could potentially affect all the other users. So that decision was made some time ago, if memory serves me correctly. Now, having said that, it was also discussed prior to myself being the executive director that the building needed to be demolished. And then we've gone back and forth over time because of some potential temporary uses. But having said that, if it is the intent of the trustees to proceed, then I need to ask you to approve basically or allow a bid document for that purpose to be prepared. And what I would like to include in that are these various requirements. One, I'm often asked how we'll determine who the bidders are. I think it's the normal customary bidders list. We'll advertise it locally for 2 consecutive weeks, which of course we are required to do by our policy. We'll advertise it on the hospital authority website. And then of course, we'll do a direct mail to any and or all demolition vendors that we can identify through reasonable efforts. So we'll make an earnest effort to look at various sources. The more bidders we can get interested, the better for us. So there's no need for us to not want to get the word out. I'm thinking that as a bid response goes, we're looking at 30 days from the date of the first advertisement. And one reason it's 30 days is I do think this should have a pre-bid meeting. I think it's important for interested bidders to go over, take a look at the building, make sure they understand it, answer or ask questions, have those questions answered, etc. So when we put a mandatory pre-bid in, we need to give time for that to happen. We will require the vendors that bid to submit a completed list of projects that they have previously done and references. We will check those. I do intend to give a local preference, or I'd indicated that I would put a local preference in the bid package because your policy allows for that. I'm thinking to give 60 days from the time that the bid is awarded. Now, make no misunderstanding. I think once they finally move in and start, that's going to be a few days and they're going to be gone. It's not like they'll take 60 days, but if we shorten up the window considerably, with all that's going on and how taxed a lot of these guys are and keeping up with their schedules, it may limit us on the number of bidders we can get. So we may award it. They may not move in until the 70th day. To the 50th day. But nonetheless, I think we need to give the 60 days total. Material disposal, we have 2 issues at play here. One is we do have asbestos and we do have lead paint. We do have an engineering report which has confirmed that. We also live in a county that has flow control requirements. And so all of those will be covered as part of the pre-bid. But they will have to understand and know that they're limited what they can do with disposal as part of this. On the salvage rights, if it exists in that building, or is on that building as of the day of the pre-bid, it becomes their property at that point. Now, what's in the building is mostly personal things that appears to me that were left over from previous administrations of the hospital. I mean, there's some personal effects in there, like plaques. And we're going to make every effort we can to let those people know if they want those items, they need to come get them. But I think anything in and of the building itself becomes part of the salvage rights. Hopefully, if there's anything there of great value, that will make them more competitive on their bid. On the utility disconnects, we'll do what's normal and customary. We will call the vendors because the accounts are in our name, and we will have those services discontinued. However, it's going to be the successful vendor's responsibility to ensure that those utilities have been cut off. Once we disconnect, we'll ask them to go out and cut them off at the street, cap everything off. But they need to make sure, because it's going to be their responsibility to maintain a safe work environment. The lead paint and asbestos I mentioned earlier, we're going to give as part of the bid specs the report, and we're going to tell them it's in there. Here's where it's at. You have to dispose of it. You have to abate it in a legal manner. We're going to put the onus on them. We're not going to go in and abate it ourselves before they come in. Insurance, I'm sure Todd's going to require general liability. He's going to require workers' comp, auto, probably inland marine, the whole 9 yards. But whatever limits he says we need is what we will include. Bid bond, I think we should require a bid bond. Now, a lot of these companies don't have a surety, so they'll be wanting to post like some other form of bond. I don't see a problem with a cash bond. I'm thinking 5%, which is normal and customary on bid bonds. I don't know if any of you have an opinion different than that, but that was mine. I've already advised Todd that I want to include the contract that the successful vendor would be required to sign as part of the bid. And by the way, this is going out as a bid, not an RFP. So we're looking at bottom line cost. But one thing about the contract is I'd rather show it and say, this is the contract you'll be required to sign, where they don't come back after a bid award and say, well, I really don't like paragraph D or C or whatever. So the idea there is just to make it all transparent. And they know exactly what they got to sign. We've had a time change and we're working in a neighborhood, so I think it's only fair and reasonable that we put time constraints on the hours of work. I don't want to make that too restrictive, but nobody over there that lives around here wants to hear backup warning devices on equipment, at 8:30 at night when it's still light. So I'll kind of ask when we do the pre-bid what they think, but we're going to put some reasonable hours on it out of respect for the neighborhood. I also think we should require security fencing. All of a sudden, we've gone from no activity to quite a bit. We have CARC, which was moving equipment today. They're right next door. It's going to cost a little more. The cost of that gets put into the bid, but I just think we should probably make them put security fencing up for safety reasons. Any other provisions that go in these, of course, that are required by Todd will do. One thing I forgot is I'm quite sure the city of Lake City requires a demolition permit. So we will make the successful vendor bidder responsible for getting his own permit from the city of Lake City. But if y'all are okay with those and those explanations, I will get these put into the proper form and we will begin this process. And hopefully we'll get some good bids for this project.
Comments, questions?
Oh, the only question I have, Mr. Williams, is because, I haven't been here that long and I toured the facility with Dwayne a year ago. Is there any functional use for that building at all?
Well, that's what the question has been historically, and we had cost estimates to bring that building up to code to make it usable. They were extremely high. A lot of that work was done prior to me, but I have reviewed it and looked at it in the past, and I would agree with that. You know, if you're going to use it for anything, you got to spend some money on it, and it's not going to be a cheap fix.
Refresh my memory, isn't that where we were going to put CARC temporarily?
We offered it to CARC, and CARC, once they really got into it, started putting numbers to it, they couldn't even make it work on a temporary basis. So y'all were able to allow them to move over to the PT building, and for the 6 months they need to be there.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept these requirements, bid requirements for the Bedoya building demolition effective immediately.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, it's further discussion.
Oh, my gosh, yes. I was like, what? Yeah, you did good though. You did good.
Want to make sure.
You crossed everything.
A motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Done that before?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, trustees, the next one, I actually have two stories to tell, so they're both quick. Number one is, you will recall, we allowed the county to lease the west end of the building. That agreement is the one that was mentioned earlier. It's in your agenda packet. It had a provision in there that was to be used for COVID-related needs. I don't know, it's been over a month now, it seems like, but the county called. They were sort of in a immediate need and hurry. They were looking for a place to put toys for tots. For those of you that may not know, that's a local program that collects toys, and they furnish those to underprivileged families and et cetera. Toys for Tots doesn't meet the definition of the lease, so I advise that, look, if you need a place and you're in a short, come use it, but I got to carry it to the trustees, make them aware of it, see if they were willing to change the lease to accommodate. That's story one. Late last week, this begins story two, I started having follow-up conversations from a party that has interest in that end of the building for a medical related use, which of course is our mission. And I truly believe that that is going to come to fruition. So it was my intent to give David Kraus, the county manager, a call today to let David know where I was in relation to that use. Toys for Tots is in an active, ongoing toy drive. What I don't want to do to them is to not let them know that there's a good chance they're going to have to abandon this anyway, and they continue to just use the space, making their issues of abandonment or leaving even worse. So I've told you all of that to tell you this. I need to contact the county manager, let him know what the current status is, but I really think it's in everybody's best interest that, and I'll be glad to help if I can, help find Toy for Tots a new home. But I don't think it can be here simply because I think we've got a better need for the property.
What about upstairs? What about upstairs?
I don't think so.
It's, I mean, the lease is a month to month lease that we have.
It's a month to month, but listen, I want to make sure that everybody understands, and this is worth repeating, and I know that the trustees know. Columbia County is very, very good to this authority. I can't name one time that I haven't called the county when we needed a bucket truck, when we needed their service crews to come help, when you needed an extra man or two that they weren't willing to send somebody over. So I think it's very much in our best interest to work with the county when we can, because they never charge, they never refuse, they do what they can to help us. And so I don't want to just go over there and be dictatorial, and I want to work with them, but I think they will understand that Toys for Tots, because of our mission and our requirements, just can't usurp a medical type need or use. So I'm not able to ask for what the original intent was tonight. And if we are able to find a space for them, Toys for Tots, they might want to negotiate their own lease or something at that point, but it won't be here. I don't think that's going to be available.
Questions or comments?
We all good?
Excellent.
Okay, good. Okay, as we have for the last few meetings, I wish to give updates on our ongoing attempts to provide medical services on the Lakeshore Hospital campus. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Dr. Michael White, who's here with us. Say, hey, Doc. But here's, and I guess because Dr. White is here with us, let me just regress a little bit and go back. Needless to say, Dr. White and his wife Molly were one of the original proposers to use space once we made a request for proposals. And they not only did it once, but they did it under both offerings. And of course, their interest is in the Women's Center, and they have an interest in building a business, which we call urgent care, but it far exceeds urgent care. And I had previously provided y'all with a list of services that they were proposing to provide versus what a standard urgent care would provide. And of course, the idea would be to ultimately one day, if everything goes well, actually grow into a standalone type ER, maybe something like what Shands calls a neighborhood hospital that you see at Kanapa Hall, that you see, over in the Gainesville area. That would be the goal. Now, to answer some of the comments that were made prior to the meeting, there has been numerous discussions historically about using the ER, what could possibly be done there, and et cetera. It's not too late that we can't have that conversation again, but I just want everybody to know in fairness that it has been discussed. So far, it hasn't really worked out. So we're not there yet, but there are a lot of pluses if that could happen. One thing for certain is we want Meridian to be a customer of MPALS, assuming that both of these come to fruition. It's good for both parties, and we have had that conversation. So I just want to make sure it's understood that those things have not just gone lost in the process. We understand how that could be beneficial. Now, as it specifically relates to MPALS, I think we have a very, very clear understanding of what Doctors Mike and Molly would like to do and how it would work. The problem that we have really is one of legality, because this is not just a public-private partnership. It kind of tilts the scale in other areas. And while it does not appear that things are being done, that's just the furthest thing from the truth. And I don't want to put Todd on the spot, but I know that Todd has worked and Bruce has worked, and they have been doing research, and there's just more to it than what most people realize. There's constitutional issues, there's statutory issues. And Todd and I had conversation earlier this morning. You know, if we can get a definitive answer on those, I truly believe that it will not take long to sit down and work out a overall business model for you to look at with the whites. But how that model looks is entirely different if it's Mike and Molly's proposed plan or whether we have to submit a plan that meets the requirements or what we believe to be the requirements of law. They get to the same thing and they involve the same people, but how you get there is entirely different. And so that's really what you and everybody needs to understand about MPALs. Now, the whites have been extremely easy to work with. And I know that I'm probably driving Michael crazy because I can't tell him any more than I'm telling you now. But, and I just have to believe that once we get the legal review complete, it'll go quick. It'll go fast. And Todd, if I've said anything that you don't agree with, please.
No, it's, there's two components. One is the lease agreement. That takes less tweaking. The big one is the financial support agreement. And that's where we're trying to work through the issues of the constitutional mandate that we cannot provide financial support to a private entity. And we're going round and round as to maybe some different alternatives. But if we can't overcome that hurdle, then like Dale said, we're going to have to propose a model that we think's within that constitutional mandate. And so the lease agreement, I should have it finished up pretty quick. And then probably by next meeting, hopefully we'll have what our comments are to pertinent provisions of the financial support agreement and what we would recommend modifications on the lease agreement. Figures easier to work off the two documents they provided and then for us to start from scratch. So that's my that is my goal, to have, you know, here's the lease that they proposed, here's our issues, and I'll work through those, Mr. Powell and Dale, to make sure I've included all of theirs and if they have any thoughts or comments on mine. So that's kind of what our timeline is.
Yeah.
That's, you were saying next meeting for the lease agreement, but not the.
Hopefully both, but definitely we get the lease agreement ironed out. The other one is the more complicated document because of that constitutional mandate.
Yeah.
Because there's no you know, we feel comfort in case law. And you got a statute that says 1, 2, 3, we gotta look at 40 cases and they explain what 1, 2, and 3 mean. Here, very little, if at all. For instance, there's a public private statute that allows relationships between those that mainly deals with infrastructure. But essentially, there's no cases on it. There's two reported lawsuits filed. One had to do with the 119 issue on getting documents. The other one was FSU. Somebody was disputing whether the entity, the private entity they were entering into the agreement with was really a contractor as defined somewhere. And both of those got resolved without opinions.
And,
So-
you know, and just to add to what Todd's saying, so let's say that Todd determined that the P3 statute could apply in this case. Well, then he's got to turn around and determine whether the selection process that we use that got us to MPALs to begin with meets the legal requirements of the P3 statute. So there's like tails to this stuff. But anyway, a lot of that research has been underway. And I just don't want anybody to have the opinion that we're not involved in trying to get to the bottom of it, because we are. And nothing would make us happier than to get to the bottom of it quicker. So, Michael, you want to say anything?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Bill.
The only thing I would really, a couple of things is, first of all, Mr. Powell and Mr. Williams have been excellent working with us. Mr. Gennon's new, the one point of frustration is we had multiple meetings with Mr. Coberline. And I thought when it was presented in November, the plan, there were kind of two plans. One was the authority owns, operates the clinic. The other was the proposal. And I was under the impression that things would start to move forward after that. The numbers were presented and I thought we were going to move forward. And then my understanding is Mr. Coberline didn't review the document. And so it went, to Mr. Kennan. The clarification is we had numerous meetings with Mr. Coberline there to review everything, to discuss it. And the hope was it's just to bang it through and get it done. As far as the two agreements, we broke it into two. I retained a lawyer who specializes in healthcare. Now he's out of Cincinnati. But I did that specifically because I assumed that there would probably be some hurdles to go through. We broke it into two documents because we figured it'd be easier to do. The lease part, if we can get that done, then at least I have an address that I can get insurance companies for billing and that kind of stuff, which is going to take 90 to 120 days after that agreement is signed. So that would be excellent if we could do that. I think one of the major sticking points in the lease agreement or in the reimbursement agreement is the stipend or subsidy in there. And we built a subsidy mainly to keep both parties accountable. One is right now in the authority board, there's not a lot of clientele enrolled. And our concern is we'll open the doors and there'll be no patients from the authority board side. The other side is to hold ourselves accountable. So when we built the subsidy, it's actually at about a $500,000 loss per year. It's not a subsidy to a profit. And in a way, the subsidy, if that's a huge holdup, is something that can be moved out of the way. I don't know how the authority board is going to help ensure that we enroll patients. Because that's a concern, is to open the doors and then nobody show up and then, we're just dying on the vine. Our intention is to do this for a very long period of time. Actually, our intention would be to retire doing this and we'd be very excited. As far as the urgent care, why it's stated that way is Florida law states that you can't advertise yourself as an emergency room unless you are a formal emergency room. Having said that, the model that we practiced in years ago at an urgent care is of a ER, and it will provide all ER level services, be it casting for fractures, be it lacerations, be it sedating somebody to reduce a fracture or something like that. We really want to make it something that's truly special and actually a higher level of care that's offered in the local hospital. And I believe that we can do that. Our hope is to get this open as soon as possible. We've kind of, been waiting for this to happen. And I know at a couple meetings, or maybe might have been last meeting, is the question was raised, what were the whites waiting for? And we're not waiting for anything except to get some stuff back to tell us what our next steps are. So I wanted to come today just to put a face, just to be present and to answer any questions you guys might have.
So you need a lease first, so that way you can start contracting with the insurance companies. That's going to take 3 to 4 months to get that set up and then start moving forward with the title of the other agreement.
Financial support.
Financial support agreement.
Well, and the other next part is if we can get the lease, then we can start doing the inside too. I think about the computers, because everything has to have an electronic medical record and it's going to have to be downloaded. We're going to have to hire people, train people. So there's the logistics part of the front end, but if we can get the lease part, and let's say we do the lease and then you guys don't like the financial reimbursement thing and it takes a while, at least we can get it open and the ball moving in the right direction. Any business is a partnership between two groups. And our set goal, or the goal is mutual with you guys, which is to open and take care of the community. And that is not going to go away regardless of that other document. It'll help when the other document goes through and we can start enrolling the patients in the authority board. But we're ready to get going and just getting the ball moving forward. It'd be nice to know that we're definitively gonna do it and move in that direction. As opposed to just kind of being in the.
And that won't be a problem having the pros and cons of the lease ready, before the next meeting. You'll have time to review it. And then we can,
So
vote on those issues.
let me ask you this, if, let's say, at the April meeting, we approve the lease at the next meeting. Is there something in the financial help me out,
Service support agreements.
support agreement that, you know, 2 months down the road, you've already started working on getting computer systems and doing that type of stuff? If something in there that doesn't go through, that you would be like, hold on now, we can't do this because, I mean, we have a lease, but now that that part didn't go through, we can't, I mean. Cause I'm all for saying, hey, let's get this lease approved and start working. I think we all wanna start opening the doors yesterday. But we also don't wanna put the cart before the proverbial horse either. If we do that and then 3 months later, we realize, oh, well, it's not gonna work after all. I'm hoping that no matter what it is, we can work through it. I'm confident we can, but is there something that,
We could, off the top of my head, I don't know the language, but we could put something potentially in the lease agreement that provides a bailout, relative to the other part being unacceptable to one or both parties. And then, you know, if you're in it 60 days and realize this isn't gonna work, then it's not a giant hurdle to, we start over with whatever's been done and move forward with another potential vendor, but that may be a way to give y'all some peace of mind.
Sure, I mean, we're not actually looking for a way out
right,
at the end of the day. The way the lease agreement was built is predicated somewhat on enrollment of patients in the authority board. So, you know, the reason it was built that way is our hope is the enrollment will go quickly and a lot of people enroll and then it's not an issue. But what would happen is, unless there were dramatic changes to both of them, it would keep the lease low for a period of time until the enrollment went up, which would keep our costs down. And our costs would be more building everything else into it. So, you know, we can't promise anything without saying what's in the contract, but our intention would be to open and move forward with what we have. And then we would just build community business outside the authority board until that part got finalized. And there has been the question of primary care, and our intention is to develop kind of primary care. We want to be careful not to compete with that with the primary care in the community. But that is our intention to do that. We just figure we would start with one and build into the other. And it's kind of a big part of the apple to chew, to open it all at once and do everything at once. So, but that is our intention.
This is not the first time Michael has suggested this. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, hard for me to separate the two. And I told Michael that. I mean, it makes sense if you can find a way to do it. I was kind of like you were, Mr. Chairman. I kept, in my mind, one kept hinging on the other. But if we're not able to get to an immediate reconciliation of the legal issues and a lease under these parameters that were discussed will work, I think maybe that's the way to go.
Under that assumption, Mr. Kennan, is it putting any pressure on you to have it done in less than a month, where we could have a special meeting to approve it?
I mean, the month would be the outside.
And the inside?
I don't know, I get with Bruce is out this week with surgery, but yes.
I mean,
I'll have an outline. I've already started one from our last meeting that we had. So the lease agreement's not gonna be at all an issue, to be ready to be discussed with possible action at the next meeting if we get it done quicker.
Yes.
As soon as I get it done, I'm sending it to Dale. And we'll do it that way.
But how many days do we need notice for a special meeting?
We'll have to advertise it 1 week in advance. Is that correct? 10 days.
10 days.
So
So
what,
if-
Todd,
Give us a ballpark figure.
Plan to run for good.
No, I'm not running.
so if we do it like we've done things in the past, if it makes sense for us and we can save a week or so, then we'll call the meeting. If we're not gonna save but a day or two, we won't. We'll
Right.
just put it on the next regular meeting.
I got you.
And I'll keep Dale appraised of the timeline. If I don't see running into an issue because we've already vetted a lot of this.
Well,
Right.
y'all-
With Dr. White, so.
y'all don't forget now that Todd's work product has got to go back to Michael's attorney.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas, I'm retired. I hate to use the term special meeting, but
I'd like to make clear that the lease is a lease, but the financial support agreement is a significant financial commitment. And if you entered into a lease, everyone thinking that the lease would lead into the significant financial commitment, then the lease is more important than just, let's get a lease done. Because there's steps, there's remodeling buildings, there's computer systems, there's all of that. And if it's anticipation on a significant financial commitment that might not be feasible, then
Well,
it might end up a mess.
Wait a minute.
well, here's what I think though, because like I had said earlier, I too was having trouble separating them. I think though that my recommendation would be to prepare the lease, and we'll prepare the lease and we will make it as generous as we can or as straightforward as we can as a lease. But that's all you can do. And then if Michael says this won't work, then we're gonna have no choice but to pull it in and do the financial services as part of it.
So I think what Doc is saying is, let me look at a lease the board would approve.
Exactly.
And then if they're comfortable with rolling the dice isn't the right word, if they're comfortable with making the commitment to start moving forward, understanding that no guarantee on any financial commitment, then, certainly that's a business decision they can make.
And also even, and I'm the same, I feel like they go together, but I mean, maybe if it's whatever the lease is and you're comfortable with that and you're, whether or not the financial.
And it makes it easier to go ahead and get a lease approved that the board would become, trustees would be comfortable with. And then at the same time, we'll be working on the other one, but at least we can get one that, even if they decide not to enter into it, we know that this has been approved by the trustees, and that's our model to work with.
Like Dr. White said, I also don't want it to hold them up from doing what they need to do. So if we, 3 months from now, we have both of them done, but then it's gonna take them 3 or 4 months to
Yeah.
get ready to open. I don't want it to, now we're 6 or 7 months down the road.
So what's in a P3 agreement?
So the other question I had, just so I can wrap my mind around it. You mentioned there was, 2 models proposed, one where the hospital authority would kind of own, I guess, this
Be more traditional.
urgent care, and then so, and we would contract with you, is that what you guys?
Yes, I mean, that's not, that one was originally proposed in November. That's not something that we're eager to
Okay,
do. I think having skin in the game makes a lot more,
sure.
there's win on both sides.
I'm just wondering if there was some way to, word it in the lease that if the financial reimbursement, doesn't come to fruition, then this is the backup plan that could potentially.
Well, perfectly understand. I think Todd said it best. If we can put one together, then it rests with Doc and his counsel, whether it is something they can they can enter into. And what Todd also said is, look, if for some reason we prepare a lease, they decide they really can't sign that form of lease, at least then we have that part of it done and we can move on in and try to resolve the financial side.
Have you already looked into your medical equipment that you're gonna need?
We had done that, yes, long time ago.
Okay,
at-
because-
At Lake Shore, and we had talked through some different things. There's some stuff.
But I mean, as far as companies and actually what they have. Not just, okay, I need a CT scanner. But the companies and what they provide but I'm sure you're gonna rent a scanner.
Well, so there was initially different discussion about that, about how to put the scanner in, who would own the scanner, this and that. And I had the impression that the board would prefer to own the equipment. So if, let's say you guys decide we're lousy and you want us out, that you own the equipment and the equipment doesn't go away. We can talk about different ways to do the equipment. The way the proposal was built was that you guys would own and we would maintain the equipment. Or you would lease and we would maintain the equipment.
Okay, and in that case. When a lease is signed. I think we as board members. Should be appraised of the equipment you need, because I know firsthand it can take up to 6 months to get some of it.
And we have a list built in the financial agreement document there at the second part that lists all that stuff.
Yeah, we have that, Miss Laurie.
Okay,
And I built in the estimated cost and all that kind of stuff. Mr. Powell had asked me for a more detailed list. I think my second proposal was 17 pages long or something. It was a long, very detailed the estimated cost, and we had researched all that. And then the cost to maintain and all that kind of stuff was all built in.
and did you specify like where you wanted X-ray and where you wanted the lab for the inspections for those? Because
So-
those have to be done before you can do it.
Yeah, so for the lab portion, we were gonna do CLIA wave testing, so you would have to have, I'm sure the state would come in and evaluate, but it wouldn't be a full lab with a lab director and lab-based testing. It would be the point of care testing that you can get back rapidly to make decisions on. As far as the equipment, we've gone back and forth about where to put the equipment, because the two-story building does not have room, say, for a CT scanner to build in the lead walls and all that kind of stuff. And we were kind of waiting to see what was gonna happen with Lake Shore, the building, or the PT building to see, and we had gone over that and toured that and talked about, how to work that one. It's kind of, we have to kind of see what's gonna happen with the other stuff before we can know what we're gonna do with our part. Now, Meridian, for example, moves in and they say, we're not gonna use the CT scanner space and the ultrasound space, then we just have to design a way to get patients from A to B and be able to work it that way. If Meridian doesn't work out and the building goes down, then a PP building or a small building next to it, something like that, we'd have to look into that. But we don't expect to have a CT scanner right when we start opening. And I'm not even sure in the ultrasound machine, because almost all the machines now to get it to a radiologist have to be digital. And I'm not even sure how new the machines are in Lake Shore, if they're compatible to be able to do that. That's my guess too, is probably not.
Yeah, they're not.
But, and I don't even know about the X-ray machines, just the portable X-rays. But if not, those are obstacles that we have to work through to get from A to B.
Well, and there are radiologists that do it strictly digitally. And you get your reports within hours.
Yeah, and that's what Envision Radiology that is out of Gainesville, and I believe they sold their building here in Lake City, but that's the practice that they have, that you can send it electronically to them, and
Yeah.
it's not an emergency study, but it would be read same day. And we plan on giving wet reads of the stuff that we're comfortable doing. We look at a lot of CAT scans and stuff. But for the stuff that, CAT scans, you don't want to miss a nodule or something like that. That needs a little read.
Yeah. Even on some bone fractures.
even on the road practice, yeah, anything that we're uncomfortable with, I mean, I'll just basic. And we plan to provide basic ultrasound ourselves. You know, if somebody comes in and says, you know, I think I'm pregnant, put the ultrasound, oh, there's a baby, and here's a picture for you. But we're not gonna measure the size of the fetus and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with a blood clot in the leg and, you know, all that stuff. You have to be prudent with what you do, and we're not gonna overstep where we're, you know, trained to practice.
I very much look forward to having an urgent or emergency care where you know you're not going to get stuck in the hospital overnight unless it's really something bad.
Yeah, and our goal as a model is to keep people out of the hospital. So the goal would be is if you need IV antibiotics and you're stable enough to go home, that you go home and you come back the next day and you get another dose of IV antibiotics. But that's kind of the model. The goal is to prevent folks from having to go to the hospital.
Let's see everything.
All his equipment tied up in the lease or in the operation agreement?
It's in the lease.
I'm with Mr. Powell here saying we could be opening up a can of worms. We could tie up a whole bunch of equipment if we can't get the operational thing going. Just saying, we get a pile of equipment in there. And no tenant.
Well, I think what Mr. Ken is saying is come up with a lease that would be just a lease. Potentially without the financial reimbursement. To see if that's something that they're open to. Without that, and then if they say no, we have to have the financial reimbursement also.
And I think that'd give a good opportunity for the trustees to look at the proposal. Actually looking at it and saying, okay, now let's start talking specifics, go to here, go to there. I think that's the start is that we can get it to them in time and then they can have their input. And then so we're doing two things at one time, specifically initially dealing with that one document. And that way it lets them make a decision on a business model.
And some of the equipment we can supply. I mean, it's not like you're gonna have to go out and incur debt, do all that or initially. I mean, quite a bit that's on that list, we'll be able to do pretty quickly at not great dollar value.
I voted for it. I'm all for it. 100%. I don't want to stand in the way. I'm just saying. Let's make
It's
sure.
not as easy as
Well,
it sounds.
Yeah. And I think that's the joy of it. I mean, yeah, it is kind of being piecemeal, part A, part B.
Yeah,
But nobody is, I mean, tonight, we're not saying, you give us a lease, you recommend it and we'll sign it. So we come back in April and y'all say, I'm looking at it now, I see all the different parameters. So where are we at on part B? And we'll be able to tell you. And if you're not comfortable with it, then, and they may come back and say, we can't agree to your proposals in these three sections, and this is our alternative. But at least we're getting it here, where we can start talking about it. And if we get to an agreement that, and again, Mr. Powell, he's the financial guy. So, if he says absolutely not, then I'm obviously gonna go with his recommendation. But I think this is a good way to start based on what Dr. White has said tonight. Nobody's committing to anything. It's just, I've got to get off my can, get the focus on the lease agreement. And let's get that before the board so y'all can start talking about it. And then at the same time, we'll be working on the other.
So if you're done with that in 2 weeks, even if we don't schedule a special meeting, you could send that to us so we can all start.
Yeah, that's something you need the night before.
Marking
Friday.
it up,
Yeah.
that we can review it
And give them the same courtesy.
right.
Because the more information we have when we go over it, if paragraph 6, as I propose it, picking the hypothetical, if they say there is no way that'll ever work and here's why, then at least we're now discussing it and we know it's on the table and everybody's talking apples to apples. But yes, essentially, the model is you can do a straight lease and they make a go of it as a private entity leasing from us. The second part is the hard part as far as what we're gonna agree to be able to help with the financial. That's the sticky wicket.
Does that make sense? Are you agreeable to?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a partnership.
Right.
And, you know, I wanna collaborate with the board to make it work, and it's on both ends matching. I mean, it's funny, any relationship you go into, everybody's a little bit hesitant about how one side or the other side will behave. I certainly know our intentions, I know your guys' intention, the ultimate goal is the exact same. So it's just paperwork to get from A to B.
Can only speak for myself, but I feel like from the comments, I mean, I think everybody on the board is looking forward to getting this completed as soon as possible. The best way possible for everybody involved and taxpayers included.
And that doesn't mean we're not gonna continue to work on part B.
Right.
It's just the focus is gonna be to get this lease done, get you the information you need. So that we can at least. Don't come back in April and go, oh, we're still working on, at least we got one part of it we can talk about. Whether we ultimately agree on anything, that's for the meeting. But at least we have something to start talking about.
Said it before, I'll say it again. I'll do as many special meetings as we need, not that they're my favorite, but.
What are you doing
let's
Saturday
get it
afternoon?
Yeah.
Don's available all day Saturday.
After 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll sure
But I
be
I think
over.
whatever we could do to get it started, I think we're all at the point.
So I got my marching orders. I'm ready to go.
Special meeting in 3 weeks.
Okay, I just have a very
I'm a future
personal
tax
question.
man.
What type of X-ray equipment are you getting?
Just digital X-ray, digital basic that'll fit in that. To start in the women's center is something that'll fit in that lead line room over there. So a portable X-ray would be, I mean, you guys.
No, you don't want portable.
No, I don't. And there is a nice fixed one over there in Lakeshore. It's just, it would require some remodeling.
Oh, it would require a lot of remodeling.
Yeah. So,
That's like a 1990 unit.
no, but I completely agree with you of having the right equipment in there. It's just getting something started.
Okay, but you want a fixed unit, basically?
That would be, yes. Yeah. But that's gonna require some remodeling over there.
I think there's a tabletop that can be used over there. I think that's about the only thing.
Anything else, Dr. White, or any questions or comments before?
All right, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much, we appreciate it. Look forward to getting it going soon.
More than that.
But yeah, I don't know how you differentiate them. I guess.
You see the problem I have.
Good, you believe.
Got the contract completed for Meridian, that was your back.
Yeah,
Well, so far, these conversations haven't gone quite like I thought they would. Okay, Meridian, the good news is the 20th, which is today week. We will be having our first face-to-face meeting with Meridian's team, which includes their lawyers, administrators, etc. Up until now, it's been phone conversations, Zoom meetings, and supplying information back and forth. But I really think once we sit down and have a face-to-face, that too is going to go rather quickly. I think by your next meeting, you're going to, like we just talked about with MPALs, you're going to get a lot of information about Meridian and where we're at. I wish we could have had the face-to-face prior to tonight, but when you got that many people and you're trying to coordinate schedules, it don't always work out the way you want it to. But I think we're going to have a long meeting that day, and I think a lot's going to get done. Todd, have you got any more requests for information from them? I have not. I think everything I've been asked to supply, I have now sent. So they have everything they've asked for.
Have you heard any feedback from them, anything that they seem to be
Well, I think it's just like Dr. White in many cases. They're an interested party. They want that building. You know, they would like to be a partner with the authority. It's not like we're having to entice them to get them to the table. They want to be at the table, just like Dr. White wants to be at the table. So those are not issues. It's just a matter of can we come to a meeting of the mind and an understanding of all the various nuances that are required here.
Is there anything holding the process up with Dr. White's or Meridian that the trustees can do to alleviate it?
Not that I know of. Of course, I'm not bashful either. I mean, I don't hesitate to ask you if I need something, but I do not see anything. I think we're in a position very, very soon that we're ultimately going to get down to some decision making.
Questions, comments on Meridian?
It was the 20th, right, Todd?
Yeah.
Monday.
10 a.m.
Monday week.
Is that open to any interested parties as far as board members?
No,
Okay, that's a.
I think one board member could possibly attend, and
Yeah,
this is more of a Todd question.
Kennedy.
You get into all kind of 119.
But,
I mean, that's just.
If,
yeah.
and it's at the staff level, so it's going to be a closed
agree.
meeting. There's not going to be any press there or any other party.
Okay. Curious. If I was appointed, I'd be just like I have at the other meetings, to be seen and not heard.
If you have interest in meeting there.
Depends on what time it starts.
9 o'clock promptly,
I'll be in-
whether he's gobbling or not.
I ain't leaving.
Oh, that's right. Spring gobbler season. I get it now.
And so if you want to go or anybody else wants to go, just coordinate it so that there's only one.
Yeah, beyond that, I think you get into some legal issues there.
Exactly.
We're liable to talk to each other.
That all you got, Mr. Williams?
I hope so, Mr. Chairman.
Have the unfinished business that we didn't cover?
Oh, sure.
Board member comments, Ms. Chancey?
No comments.
Anything? Cynthia, you got anything? Yeah, Ken, you got anything going on? No. Douglas?
Don, you're gonna call Todd every day, check on that lease.
Oh, he will. He keeps me on my toes. I got. He may change his number though, so. I mean, I just answered the phone. That's his dilemma.
That's better than not answering. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've exhausted our agenda.